Hello everybody and welcome to the Audio Couple. Today I'm quite privileged to do a review again, and this time around it's actually a loudspeaker, and it's quite a large floor standing loudspeaker, and these loudspeakers are from Sonor Audio, the Claro 10.2s. Maybe let's first do an overview of the actual loudspeaker. Yes, as mentioned previously, it's quite a large floor stander, which typically we like as the Audio Couple. We like loudspeakers that can actually project quite a lifelike sound stage, or let's call it also a sound image. And for sure, the Claro 10.2s can project quite a substantial, let's call it sound field. But let's first have a quick overview of the loudspeaker. So this loudspeaker comes in quite tall, at about 1.87 meters tall, just under 300 millimeter wide, so about 295 millimeters wide, and 470 millimeters deep. And Roy, actually, who is the manufacturer and also the owner, the main owner of Sonor Audio, he actually fitted mine with wheels, so I could easily place the loudspeakers in the listening environment, and that open up a lot of opportunities related to the loudspeaker as well. Then the loudspeaker, what is interesting, it's actually front ported. It's got two ports per bass driver, and in this case it's a 10-inch bass driver. So in the front it's got four ports. So it's a bass reflex design, and then very interestingly enough, the mid-range drivers also is ported, but these ports are situated at the back. And as Roy explained to me, it's actually to remove some of the back energy of the 5-inch mid-bass drivers, to get rid of the excess energy at the back of the driver. And as he explains, it actually gives a much smoother response between the mid-range driver and the tweeter. So if we look at the drivers, the loudspeakers actually got two 10-inch bass drivers and two 5-inch mid-range drivers, and then a 38 millimeter ring radiator tweeter. Look, what is interesting maybe to know is on the bass drivers, it's actually aluminium cones with sort of a Kevlar dust cap. Then maybe the most important thing is that you'll notice it's an inline design. All the drivers are all inline, and it's basically a symmetrical design. And of course it's the Apollo MTM type of configuration on the mid-range and the tweeters. And then further to this is actually that they actually in a tractrix horn. So a lot of people will ask, okay, so what is the difference between a normal horn and a tractrix horn? Well, a normal horn, yes, it's to disperse the sound, but also to couple acoustically the tweeter to the environment, or to the air, let's call it, between you and between the listener and the loudspeaker. But a tractrix horn actually goes slightly further. It actually shapes the actual sound, let's call it, field emanating from the mid-range tweeters array, and this then projects the sound in a certain way that the designer intended. And then further to this, which for me was very exciting, is that the loudspeakers are also time aligned. If you look carefully, you'll see that the tweeter is actually a bit more recessed in comparison with the mid-ranges, and then the mid-ranges is also further recessed if you compare it to the mid-bass drivers as such. So yes, all in all, quite a nice loudspeaker. You also get it in two types of finishes, in this type of cherry wood finish, which is a real wood veneer, but you also get it in a nice walnut. Roy actually prefers the walnut. I actually received these demo units in the more cherry wood. It's slightly of a reddish hue to them, but for me actually I prefer these, and further to that they also match my center loudspeaker. So as I explained, look, I use them in a stereo configuration and also in my home cinema, just to see, what is if there's some versatility towards the loudspeakers, and for sure there is versatility to these loudspeakers, the Claro 10.2s from Sonor Audio. Then next, let's just, I think the more important part for a lot of you people out there is, or our audience, is that, what is the sound performance of these loudspeakers? And I think this is the most important part. So look, what I can tell you is that these loudspeakers tick all the boxes, from an Audio Couple perspective. So first of all, what is most important for me is basically the full range speaker. And for sure, this loudspeaker don't need any subwoofers. They easily extend again down to 25 hertz, and in fact the spec sheet indicate that the frequency response from 25 hertz up to 25 kilohertz, and a slight deviation of only about 3 decibel, which is quite impressive. So well done to Roy and his team that configured these loudspeakers. Yes, first of all, like I said, it's a full range, but then also it employs the MTM configuration, the Diapollo MTN configuration, and of course it's time aligned, and then further, it actually used the Tactrix horn to disperse the sound energy. So the first impression is that, yes, full range, but create a center image that is just unbelievable. Irrespective of male or female voices, your center or the other word to explain it is the imaging. It's just unbelievable. I've never had any loudspeakers in our listening area that can image this well. So what I mean by imaging is also, where the actual singer is placed in the recording, or whether a recording engineer intended the main singer to be in the actual recording sound field, and then also if there's certain instruments that is panned more to the left or to the right, or maybe deeper into the recording or the layering in the recording. So these loudspeakers just, there's no other loudspeaker that I've had that can actually recreate it as such. And then also a very lifelike, a natural ability of the loudspeakers to reproduce music. And then we all, again, like we've done, in most of our reviews, listen to a wide variety of genres, including pop music, vocals, jazz, this type of thing, also rhythm and blues. But I can also mention that related to rock music, these loudspeakers have got is just in a league of their own. It actually made the rock music pleasant to listen to. Now I know a lot of people say, okay, but rock music needs to be high energy, this type of thing. Yes, it recreated the energy, but also, if there's an electric guitar, it will reproduce it as such that it's actually palpable, especially electric guitars, but that also goes for acoustic guitars, drums, and then of course female or male vocals as well. So I think now we should also look at the scorecard for these loudspeakers. From an audio perspective, I'll give it a 9.4 out of 10, and related to the design, I think 9.6, because I think the design actually also speaks towards the audio performance and why they actually achieve this high rating from the audio couple. I think it's because all of the different technologies that has been applied to the loudspeaker that actually made the sound such a, let's call it a pleasure to listen to. Look, I think the time alignment play a big part to the loudspeaker design, the actual Tactrix horn, the actual driver elements that's being used, but then also the reinforcement inside these cabinets. There's plenty of reinforcement, and I'll also share a picture with related to the structural reinforcement within the loudspeaker cabinet with you guys. And then finally as well it's not just about also the drivers, but also I think the bass reflex system inside these loudspeakers were expertly done, and then as well the crossover between the different loudspeakers is just seamless, so you can clearly see there's been a lot of time dedicated towards the crossover. So by the way, for the bass section it's a second order filter, and then for the mid and the tops, Roy employed third order crossover networks, but really seamless. I couldn't hear that there's actually any mismatch from a frequency response domain, or even from a, let's call it the integration type of issues between the drivers. It was just seamlessly done, and that's why I've given it a very high rating. Then if we look at value, I've also rated it extremely high at 9.6. So currently these loudspeakers go for around 18,000 US in the States. Look, but in the local market, you guys can consult the dealers, but I think you'll end up with quite a surprise, because here of course we don't pay for the freight or the transport, and also not import duties, because it's a locally produced loudspeaker in South Africa. That's why I've given it an extremely high rating related to value. But even at the price of 18,000 US, I think that related to sound quality, there's not a lot of loudspeakers that compare to these loudspeakers in that price range. So I think the pricing is also done very well. It's very competitively priced. And look, I think from first impression, it's just, guys, this is excellent loudspeakers, from the actual drivers, the design, the overall look as well. Beautiful loudspeaker, and it will enhance any listening area from a looks perspective, but also from an audio perspective related to scale of sound, palpability, and realism, if I can say that. And then again, as I stated, the center channel that it can recreate related to the music. And then for an overall rating, it's 9.5 out of 10, which I think is one of the highest rated products that I've had in my home. And this is what I think about these loudspeakers. They are really an excellent value, I would say. Just a well-rounded loudspeaker. So, welcome Teresa. Yeah, so look guys, I think we enjoyed the time with these loudspeakers. They were very much to our liking, the type of sound that we enjoy. And as mentioned, we played a lot of different genres. We used high resolution audio, good recordings, audiophile recordings. But then we also play back normal YouTube videos in stereo. And we used the loudspeakers in the cinema setup. But also in the stereo setup. And in the stereo setup, I actually make now use of the VTL MB450s, Mark IIIs. And the preamp that I'm using in my setup is the Audio Research Ref 6. Okay, and then maybe your impression from your side, Teresa. I know the one evening we spoke about the physical size of the loudspeakers, and you said that actually the loudspeaker...
It really matters, because the sound is projecting better. If you sit and listen, it's coming from the top.
Yes, or it actually fills the listening area with a bigger sound stage, if I can say that. Yeah, and maybe from a smaller loudspeaker, you don't get that realism or that room-filling sound, let's call it that. And again, I would say you get room-filling sound without really needing to go to the extremes. What I mean by that is to increase the volume of the that you're driving the loudspeakers with beyond the capabilities of the amplifier. Even if you play at modest levels, you get this large scale rendition of the audio, which for us makes sense. Look, then from me, what's the positives? I think everything that I mentioned. I think at this price point there was no negatives. And then maybe just a final thing that I felt could be slightly improved upon is maybe the mid-bass fullness. But I think the loudspeakers are a bit more natural or neutral in that regard. So maybe it's just me, that wants a bit more of a fuller mid-bass. But other than that, I think you're in for a extremely high performance loudspeaker here. And as Roy also mentioned on his website, when they first had a listen to the loudspeaker, they were quite amazed about the actual performance. Yes, and then also related to, we actually moved the loudspeakers, around quite a bit to find the ideal listening spot, or let's call it sweet spot for us. And
maybe thank you, Roy, for putting it on wheels, because moving it around, only me and Nimrod.
Yeah, and so Teresa, normally she flexes the muscles to try and move it, but I must say she's quite a good partner related to trying also to move it. But we come up with ingenious ways of moving the loudspeakers. But this time around, yes, the wheels, it made a big difference. Even for, just slight toe-in differences, these type of things that we wanted to achieve. And again, in my listening room, funny enough, to broaden the sweet spot, we didn't use a lot of toe-in. And that actually, for us, recreated the best believable sound stage. But again, it will depend on your room. But from the word go, we actually achieved good performance, and then we just had to tweak it and optimize the sound. And but what we also realized, just a small movement in the loudspeaker can actually make a big difference. But again, it's not that you have to that the majority of your time will go into the optimization because the actual design is so good. You know, the way that it just projects the sound into the room is much better. You know, I think with a lot of other designs, you have to spend a lot of time to try and get the setup just right. With these loudspeakers, I mean, just at the way, it's almost like an antenna that they project the sound into the room. You achieve immediate results. But yes, I think, guys, from my side, Nimrod and Teresa, thank you again for your support. If you like this video, please give it a big thumbs up. If you want to see more of our videos, please subscribe. And if you want to stay ahead of the latest developments on our channel, please hit the bell. Thanks again, and cheers.